Do you ever wish you felt as confident on the inside as you look on the outside? Chronic insecurity isn't necessarily caused by hidden traumas from your childhood that are going to take years and years to unwind. Very often, the true causes of insecurity come from your habits in the present, not the events of your past. In the rest of this video, I'm going to share 3 of the most common causes of insecurity, plus some of my favorite strategies for undoing them and allowing your natural confidence to shine through. Number 1, overthinking. Our ability to think analytically, to solve problems, to plan for the future, it's one of our greatest tools as human beings. But like any tool, it can be used well or poorly. And very often, the line between healthy productive thinking and unhealthy overthinking is razor thin. For example, the line between imagining and planning for what could go wrong and worrying is surprisingly hard to tease apart. But if you've gotten into the habit of chronic worrying, anxiety and insecurity are going to result. The line between healthy reflection on our mistakes and ruminating over them is subtle. But if you're stuck in a habit of ruminating on mistakes and failures, self-doubt and low confidence are gonna be inevitable. Similarly, the line between healthy introspection versus self-criticism is devilishly slippery. And if you're chronically judgmental with yourself, your self-esteem and resilience are going to go down. This is why people who are expert problem solvers often are especially vulnerable to overthinking and insecurity. When you're good at thinking your way through problems, you try to think your way through every problem, but some problems actually get worse, not better, with more thinking. Thankfully, you can break the cycle of overthinking by understanding the psychology that drives it, which is much more emotional than a lot of us want to admit, because very often, overthinking is a defense mechanism against painful emotions. For example, maybe you feel really anxious about an upcoming presentation you have to give that is really important. Then, to avoid or distract from the feeling of anxiety in your body, you go into your head and start worrying, imagining what people will think, anticipating all the ways you could screw up, contingency planning for, what happens if I get panicky and I need to escape. And while this habit of going intellectual up into your head and worrying, it does give some very brief relief and distraction from your feelings of anxiety. Remember, it gets you out of your body and into your head. It comes at a really steep price. More anxiety and less confidence long term, because by avoiding your feelings, you've taught your brain to fear them, which means the next time you start to get afraid or anxious or feel insecure, you're going to get anxious about being anxious. And your overall level of fear and insecurity will quickly spiral out of control. The solution to this vicious cycle is to actually lean into the emotion instead of using thinking to get rid of it or avoid it. By approaching your difficult emotions, you teach your brain that they are safe, and in the future, you will feel more confident around them. So what does all this look like in practice? Well, I think there are 2 really key steps. The first is identify the emotions behind your overthinking. If you struggle with rumination, for instance, the next time you find yourself ruminating, try to briefly pause and ask yourself, what emotion am I trying to think my way out of? Or let's say you struggle with self-doubt. The next time you notice that you're doubting yourself, ask yourself that same question. What emotion am I trying to think my way out of right now? Remember, behind every form of overthinking is a painful emotion waiting to be acknowledged. Number 2, validate the emotion behind your overthinking. Once you've gotten better at noticing the emotions behind your overthinking, the next step is to briefly validate them instead of using overthinking to try and distract yourself from them and avoid them. A simple script for validating painful emotions that I really like is to say to yourself, I don't like feeling this way, but it's understandable given the situation. So, for example, I don't like feeling anxious, but it's understandable given how important this meeting is. Or, I don't like feeling guilty, but it's normal to feel some guilt after doing something wrong. If you want a little bit more guidance and structure on how to identify and process the difficult emotions behind your overthinking, I have a free emotional processing toolkit, which you can download using the link in the notes. Number 2, you think anxiety means something is wrong. Anxiety is awful, full stop. Whether it's the racing heart and lightheadedness of a panic attack, or the kind of incessant worrying of social anxiety, or the constant self-doubt of imposter syndrome. Nothing could be more natural than wanting to get rid of your anxiety and as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, this very instinct to get rid of anxiety is precisely what makes it worse. Anxiety is simply unproductive fear. It's your brain mistakenly thinking that you're in danger and trying to help you deal with it. When your fire alarm goes off in the middle of the night and you race downstairs to see what's wrong, that surge of adrenaline that you're feeling, that's just your brain trying to help you in case there actually is a real threat like a fire. And even though there wasn't actually a fire in this situation, the fact that you felt anxious wasn't bad, it was just unhelpful in this particular situation. Or take a much more common example. You get a confusing text from a coworker that seems to imply that they're angry with you, and you immediately feel anxious. Now, as uncomfortable as anxiety feels, your brain knows that your relationships, especially important relationships like close family members or coworkers, these are a crucial part of your overall well-being and success in life. And if one of those relationships might be in danger, your brain shooting you up with a little bit of adrenaline and fear, that's just its way of trying to help you deal with a potential threat or what it thinks is a potential threat. And so, even if that coworker isn't actually mad at you at all, you just misinterpreted the text, again, anxiety is just your brain trying to help. It's not a sign that something is wrong or broken. So often, chronic anxiety and insecurity are the result of an unhealthy relationship with anxiety. Specifically, we've developed a combative relationship with our anxiety. But if you always treat your anxiety like a problem or an enemy, that's increasingly how it's going to start to feel. We all get afraid and anxious. Welcome to being human. But whether we're chronically anxious and insecure comes down to our relationship with anxiety. And the more you treat anxiety like an enemy, something to be gotten rid of or avoided, fixed, solved, eliminated, the stronger and more frequent it will become over time. And eventually, it will start to dominate your entire life. But the more you can treat anxiety like a friend, well-intentioned, but sometimes mistaken, the more resilient you will be the next time it shows up. Now, creating a healthier relationship with anxiety, it's a whole thing, it's a whole process. I often spend months with my clients working on this, but there are two really simple strategies that you can start using right away to do just that. Number one is reframe anxiety as adrenaline. When you start feeling anxious, remind yourself that anxiety, it's just your brain trying to help you. And while a little bit of adrenaline and sympathetic nervous system activation, it's pretty uncomfortable, it's not a sign that something's wrong. If anything, it's actually a sign that your brain cares a lot about you and is trying to help you, even though in this particular instance, maybe it's a little confused. The second one, this one's gonna seem a little bit silly, but I promise you it's very effective. Give your anxiety a name and a personality. One of my favorite coaching clients ever who struggled with pretty intense social anxiety, she finally started to get some traction when she got into this habit of labeling her anxiety as the worrywart. And she pictured the worrywart as this little old lady with curlers in her hair and a big wart on the end of her nose. And while it seems kind of silly to personify a difficult emotion like anxiety, it can actually really help because what it does is it gives you distance on the emotion. Instead of feeling like you're stuck in the emotion starts to be this thing over here, out, it's part of you, but it's over there. You have distance on the emotion, which allows you then to respond to it in a healthier way rather than reacting to it with avoidance or overthinking. Remember, as bad as anxiety feels, it's not a bad thing, and you're not bad for feeling it. Number 3, conflict avoidance. It's a very tired cliche that human beings are social creatures, but it's true. And an implication of this truth that we don't think nearly enough about is that some amount of anxiety, in particular social anxiety, is our default and is completely normal. Unless you're a sociopath, you probably care about other people, especially really important people in your life, spouses, bosses, friends, family members. And because you care about those people and your relationship with them, you also probably care about how they think of you, what they think about you as a person and your relationship. So this common piece of advice we hear all the time about how you shouldn't care about what other people think, it's really pretty silly if you think about it. Obviously, we don't want to spend too much time and energy thinking about what other people think or ruminating or dwelling on it. But the fact that we think about it and think about it a lot sometimes, It makes perfect sense given how relational we are as a species, and even how much of our success and happiness and well-being in life depends critically on working well with other people. Unfortunately, this can lead to some pretty unhealthy beliefs and behaviors when it comes to conflict. Now, the term conflict, it's kind of loaded because a lot of us assume that it's a negative thing by default, that it's inherently bad if we have or experience conflict. But just because some forms of conflict are bad, think of physical abuse, for instance, that doesn't mean all conflict is bad. In fact, technically speaking, conflict is just interpersonal stress. And like other forms of stress, there's healthy stress and unhealthy stress. As an analogy, think about exercise. Too much exercise, or exercising too intensely without training properly, can lead to injuries. But too little exercise is actually at least as dangerous when you think about how important exercise and physical activity are for preventing major health problems like heart disease or metabolic disorders. Here's the trick though. If you avoid all exercise because it sometimes can be bad, you're depriving yourself of one of the most important ways to improve your overall health and well-being. Similarly, when we treat all conflict as bad and try to avoid it, either intentionally or unconsciously, we deprive ourselves of one of the best ways to improve our confidence and our relationships: healthy conflict. Healthy conflict means being willing to tolerate some interpersonal stress and discomfort in service of our larger goals and values. For example, if you manage people at work, for instance, being willing to accept the stress and discomfort and awkwardness of giving negative feedback is critical, not only for your direct reports and the people you work with, but also for you. If you habitually avoid giving people feedback for fear of conflict and them thinking badly of you, you're going to end up resenting them for not working better in this case, but also resenting yourself for not being honest with them. Or let's say you are really worried about your partner or spouse's spending habits and how they're impacting your family finances. But you know that they hate talking about money and tend to get really triggered and upset anytime the topic comes up. Well, if you keep walking on eggshells and avoiding the conversation, you're going to feel increasingly anxious and worried about your finances because essentially you're procrastinating on the difficult conversation you know you need to have in order to avoid conflict with your partner. See how that procrastination is just trying to get you out of that conflict? Stepping back, the key idea is to start observing the following dynamic. So much of chronic anxiety and insecurity comes from fear of conflict and all the knots and contortions we get ourselves into trying to avoid it. Ultimately, though, the way out of this mess is to be willing to do conflict and to do it well when we need to. And that boils down to communicating assertively, to asking for what we really want, to saying no to what we really don't want, and being willing to express what we actually think and feel and believe. Now, assertiveness is a very big topic, but a really simple way to get started that I really like is to list out 2 or 3 important relationships in your life. Just think about it. Again, it could be a spouse, it could be a boss, child, a parent, whatever. And then for each of those relationships, ask yourself the following question. What's one important conversation I need to have, but that I'm afraid of? Then spend a little time brainstorming ideas for how you could start to have that conversation. Notice I said start to have the conversation. You don't even have to have the conversation right off the bat. Maybe it's just making a list of some of the things you would like to say in the conversation, or thinking about good times and places for when you could have the conversation. Or if it's a big conversation, maybe you decide to split it up into different pieces and have several smaller conversations or a series of conversations. The point is, get started moving toward that difficult conversation that you need to have. If you want a little bit more structure and advice on assertive communication in particular, because it can be tough and intimidating, especially if, either because of your personality or your culture or whatever it is, it doesn't come naturally to you. If you want a little bit more structure, I have a free assertive communication cheat sheet, which you can download using the link in the notes. Okay, let's review. If you wish that you felt as confident on the inside as you appear to other people on the outside, here are 3 common causes of chronic anxiety and insecurity. Number 1, overthinking. High achievers in particular often end up using thinking and problem solving as a coping mechanism for difficult emotions, especially fear and anxiety. But if you can learn to validate those emotions instead of trying to solve them or fix them, you can put your overthinking out of a job and all the insecurity and anxiety that comes with it. 2, thinking that anxiety means something is wrong. Anxiety is a normal, if uncomfortable, part of life. The trick is to stop treating it like an enemy and instead treat it like a well-intentioned friend. And number 3, conflict avoidance. Avoiding conflict only makes it worse in the long run. The key is to do it well by learning to communicate assertively. That's all for today's video. If you enjoyed this one, here's another video of mine I think you'll really like.